Hi, you guys. All right, you guys. It's the 28th day of February. We're in leap year, so we actually have one more day of Black History Month. Woohoo! And so today, as we are on the cusp of Women's History Month that starts on March 1st, I really wanted to look at a way to highlight pioneering, trailblazing Black women in history. There's so many that we can look at, but I kind of like digging up people that we don't hear a lot about. And so I want to talk about Daisy Bates. She's a household name in a lot of areas, I'm sure probably in Arkansas, but some of us don't know about her. So I'm going to tell you about her. You can learn about her on the Women's History Museum, from the National Women's History Museum. You can look at on their website, womenshistory.org.org. But let's get into her. Daisy Bates, she was born in 1914. Her biological mother was killed by three white men when she was 3 years old. And so she was raised in foster care. But so yeah, it's just when you have a start like that, it does something to you. You know what I mean? When you know what's in your past, your story, it really drives a lot of your passion and how you develop and who you become. And so, a lot of her story, people, really believe that it's rooted in the murder of her mother. And that kind of forced her to face racism and a lot of things as it relates to racial injustice. And so that's what happened to her. She was raised in foster care. She met her husband and began traveling with him when she was only 15 years old. She traveled with him throughout the South. They settled in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they actually started their own newspaper called the Arkansas Weekly, one of the only African American newspapers solely dedicated to civil rights and the civil rights movement. It was circulated statewide. She was really, as you can tell, very much into civil rights. She was the president of the Arkansas chapter of the NAACP, and really, 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 really an influential and household name back in that time. After the Supreme Court ruled segregation of schools was unconstitutional in 1954, she was really kind of a central person in the Little Rock Nine, and a lot of that had to do with enrolling Black kids in white schools. And so they really looked to her to help facilitate that strategy and to facilitate that whole move. And so she was instrumental in that transition of enrolling Black students into white schools. She used her newspaper, the influence that she had, and to push that federal mandate that came through back in the 50s. And that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because people were resistant. And this is 1954, people. It wasn't we seem to think that stuff was so far in the past, but it really wasn't. This was 1954. People are still living that can tell us their own personal stories about about what was going on in the 50s. And so in 1957, she selected 9 students, the Little Rock Nine, to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. And she took it upon herself to regularly drive these students to school and make sure that they were protected from, any type of violence that would ensue. And she just went there. She just was all in. You know what I mean? She just was all in. She was an advocate. She did the doggone thing. And so her memoir was published in 1962. It's called The Long Shadow of Little Rock, and it won an American Book Award. And she was on stage during the program at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963. And at the last minute, she was actually invited to speak at that march. She moved to Mitchellville, Arkansas in 1968. is a majority Black town that was impoverished and really lacked economic resources. So, but she used her organizational skills to pull residents together and improve the community. And she died November 4th, 1999. She was posthumously awarded the Medal of Freedom in 1999 as well. So, get to know Daisy Bates, a little bit more of what she's done. And again, coming off of the heels of talking about HBCUs and what they did for us as a community, you have to understand, again, talking about the power and importance of education and what it meant. But the role of civil rights, it's just rooted in equity and just making sure that we have a seat at the table, but sometimes we need to make our own table. And one of the things I like that she didn't just focus on just one thing, but moving to Mitchellville and looking at how she could organize and fix that community so it's not impoverished, so it has the resources, the economic resources that it needed to thrive. And so we know about Black Wall Street, we know about Greenwood, Oklahoma, so we know that as a community we can thrive and be successful and be self-sufficient. We have to want it and have a mindset. And a lot of the civil rights movement and the people behind it, that's really what they push for. The root of it is changing a mindset about people and humanity, and understanding what your voice can do, what it will do, and that you just have to persist to resist. And I really like that about her. So, you can learn more about her on the Women's History at the National Women's History Museum, that on the website at womenshistory.org. And that's your Black History Fact with Dr. H, the Global Mentor Coach. Remember to spread lots of love and light. Bye.